Battle of Riga. Latvia was one of the first Soviet republics to be occupied on July 8, 1941. The Nazis had captured Riga a week earlier. At first, local residents hoped for a special status for the republic and the restoration of statehood, as functionaries from the previous leadership were represented in the local government. However, soon all industrial enterprises and the territory of the country itself were declared the property of Germany. This was foreseen by the Ost Plan. The General District, Latvia, or Letland, became part of the Reichskommissariat, Ostland, under the control of General Commissioner Otto Heinrich Drexler. During the years of occupation, the population of Latvia decreased by 400,000 people, including 40,000 children. Hundreds of thousands of people were deported to forced labor in Germany, and tens of thousands were imprisoned. For this purpose, 48 prisons, 18 Jewish ghettos and a network of concentration camps, including Salaspols, were built. In addition to prisoners of war and civilians, children were placed in concentration camps and kept separately. They died from malnutrition, starvation, and medical experiments. They were killed with poisons, their limbs were amputated without pain relief, and their blood was transfused into German soldiers. Due to a shortage of personnel, the Latvian SS legions and partisan detachments received orders from the Reichskommissariat Ostland to form 2 Waffen-SS units from the local population. Recruitment into the units was declared voluntary, but was often carried out by coercive methods. Some conscripts evaded service with the Germans. Others, being ordinary members of various police formations, joined them for ideological and material reasons. After the victory over the USSR, they were promised significant benefits. However, it should not be thought that all Latvian citizens meekly accepted the new government. Throughout the entire period of occupation, partisan detachments operated in Latvia. They carried out sabotage, distributed leaflets, conducted combat operations, and carried out reconnaissance operations. In June 1944, in the third year of the occupation, the 130th Order of Suvorov Latvian Rifle Corps was created, which included 2 rifle divisions. They included citizens of Latvia and Latvians living in other republics of the USSR. It was these soldiers who took part in the bloody battles for the liberation of Latvia. The best-equipped enemy troop grouping, which included 5 tank divisions, was located in the Riga area. 4 defensive lines were built on the approaches to the city, so the German command considered this direction impassable for Soviet troops. In addition, the Russian soldiers were confronted by 730,000 troops, 7,000 guns and mortars, over 1,200 tanks and assault guns, and up to 400 combat aircraft. The operation to liberate Riga by the forces of the 3 Baltic fronts became part of the Baltic Strategic Operation to liberate the Soviet Baltic states. Overall command of the actions was entrusted to the representative of the Supreme High Command Headquarters, Marshal of the Soviet Union Vasilevsky. On September 14, 1944, all fronts simultaneously moved on the offensive in accordance with the plan of the Supreme Command. 3 heroes of this operation: Ivan Ivanovich Maslenikov, commander of the 3rd Baltic Front; Andrei Ivanovich Eremenko, in charge of the 2nd Baltic Front; Ivan Kristoforovich Bagramyan, in charge of the 1st Baltic Front. However, the first to take offensive action was the proactive 4th Shock Army under the command of Lieutenant General Pyotr Fyodorovich Malashov. Together with the 43rd Army, it broke through the enemy's defenses along a 25-kilometer sector and was able to advance more than 10 kilometers in depth. The 43rd Army, under the command of Afanasy Pavlentievich Beloborodov, displayed particular heroism and courage in this sector. In the second half of September, it carried out a large-scale offensive in the Riga direction and dispersed the demoralized groups of the Nazi Army of the Center Group under the command of Ferdinand Schorner. At this time, Latvian collaborators realized the prospect of inevitable retribution and made desperate attempts to save themselves. Some took away looted goods, others from the capital of Ostland broke through to Courland, dreaming of getting a place on a ship for evacuation to the sinking Third Reich, and then, to make their way to the humane Allies. Units of the 4th and 43rd Armies acted in a coordinated and organized manner. With active air support and artillery units, they overcame stubborn enemy resistance and crossed the Lielupe River in mid-September. Over the next 3 days, soldiers of the 43rd Army advanced 50 kilometers toward Riga. On September 16, the small town of Buldoni, one of the strategic keys to the Latvian capital, was liberated. Several units of the 3rd Motorized Corps reached the western Divina at the same time. It became clear to the Nazi command that retreat was the only means of self-preservation, despite Hitler's unequivocal orders to hold their positions to the last. Then the Leningrad front took active action, triumphantly carrying out the Tallinn liberation operation. As a result, within a week, with relatively small losses, the entire territory of Estonia was cleared of Nazis. The Supreme Command headquarters then decided to concentrate forces for an offensive in the Memel direction to prevent a mass retreat of the Nazi invaders into East Prussia. By September 27, Soviet troops continued their offensive and reached one of the most fortified lines, near Sigulda, located approximately 60 kilometers from Riga. Here, German and Latvian forces jointly held the key defensive line. In modern Latvia, at memorial events near the town of Mare, the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Latvia openly praises the exploits of the Latvian SS men who held back the onslaught of the Red Army units and gave their senior strategic partners the opportunity to retreat painlessly. Nevertheless, the resistance was weak, and in early October the Red Army continued its decisive, massive offensive towards Riga. The Nazi command, guided by common sense, had no hope of defending the city after the successful attack on the Memel Axis. When Riga was blockaded from land on October 6, German military leaders began to withdraw all forces from the city. Meanwhile, military units of the 2nd and 3rd Baltic fronts began pursuing the retreating enemy. From October 6 to 10, they broke through a number of defensive lines on the fly. The Germans threw their main forces at Salaspils, believing that it was there that they could concentrate their main units to hinder the Red Army offensive. But the Nazis miscalculated. It was General Vladimir Zakharovich Romanovsky's 67th Army, which included the 119th Rifle Corps, that crossed Lake Kish. Having begun the liberation of the city, the troops crossed the lake in 76 amphibious vehicles late in the evening of October 12. The operation to cross the lake in the northeastern part of the city, in the Međoparks micro-district, was overseen by Major General Svetkov, Chief of Staff of the 67th Army. The triumphant success of the Soviet paratroopers' landing was partly due to the fact that the Nazi command had no reinforcements in this area of Riga. Having concentrated all its forces in the Iskil and Salaspils area, it left only a cover force there. It is known that the 2 screening detachments left in Međopark by the Nazi Army Command did not expect such a rapid advance. On the morning of October 13, the Nazis began a frantic retreat, blowing up bridges across the Daugava and mining the historic buildings of the Boulevard Ring. By the end of October 13, there were virtually no German armed forces left on the right bank of the Daugava. The Red Army entered the capital of Latvia, greeted with sincere joy by the local population. As for the western part of Riga, it was cleared of Nazis by the forces of the 2nd Baltic Front by October 15. The crossing of the Daugava took place on boats and platforms, since the command of the Baltic Front sought to quickly carry out the order of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief immediately after the completion of the liberation operation of Riga. The 3rd Baltic Front was disbanded, its units were incorporated into the 1st and 2nd Baltic Fronts, as well as the Leningrad Front, after which Red Army units quickly reached the Tukums defensive line, where they continued the fight against the Nazi invaders in the difficult areas of Courland. After the liberation of Riga in October 1944, the whole of Latvia was not immediately cleared of German troops. In honor of the liberation of Riga and Latvia from the Nazi invaders by the Red Army, a monument was erected on the left bank of the Daugava.